Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sports Media TV Unfiltered Part 2 today. So we're in studio, obviously. Alright, so today, a lot of great news, a lot of fun stuff. I want to talk about a little bit of NFL. Yes, I have my coffee here. Talk about a little bit of NFL, a little bit of UFC, MMA, juicy stuff. Let's get into it, shall we? So, when we're talking about the UFC, how many of you guys have actually seen this beef between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones? Is this stuff not crazy? So, if you did not get a chance to see it yet, there's a clip. I'm not sure if it was before the fight or after a fight. These two were literally about to throw jabs at each other, and not like P&R jabs, like, you know, promotional kind of nonsense, but legitimate, like, fighting, like legitimately fight, you know, outside the octagon, kind of like street fight, I don't like you kind of thing, and a lot of harsh words between the two as well. I'm a pretty big fan of Jon Jones. I like what he does in the ring. He's definitely a tactician. And to my understanding, Daniel Cormier is more of a power fighter. He's, you know, he's stocky. He's like the opposite of Jon Jones if you talk about in stature. You know, Jon Jones is a lanky guy, about 6'4", 6'5", and, you know, DC is kind of like, But I think it would be a good fight. I definitely believe that much. I've seen, I watched Jon Jones. He fought against Rampage Jackson. I watched one of his throwback fights. It was a long time ago. He beat Rampage Jackson by submission, and like I said, I love the way Jon Jones fights. So I haven't really seen a lot of Daniel Cormier. I've just, you know, heard of him. You know, I know of him because, you know, he's obviously pretty good. So it will be a pretty cool fight. Pretty cool fight. But the beef, though, is actually real. So I don't know how this fight would turn. I don't know how, you know, how safe this fight actually is. I'm very excited to see these two go at it. I'm pretty sure they have a pretty good fight. And on top of this, obviously, we couldn't talk about this without talking about Conor McGregor, who so playfully and delightfully decided to troll the announcement about these two guys heading UFC 200 because, you know, obviously Dana White and him had that little power struggle, and Dana White pretty much just said, you know, you're out of the fight, you know, you're not going to be able to fight in UFC 200 in the story. So, you know, Conor McGregor, of course, you know, had to have something to say about it. As always, his entertainment value is much appreciated in these matters, because they do get quite intense for me, and I do like what he brings to the sport. But enough about that. Holm is not very happy right now. At least Holm's camp is not at this point. Holm's coach has made a public statement that he feels like the UFC is punishing Holm for beating Ronda Rousey. And, you know, it was to go outside of paraphrasing, there was some stuff about, you know, Holm beat, the UFC, I mean the MMA's, you know, cash cow, Ronda Rousey, and, you know, but she was supposed to, and she feels like every day they don't allow her to get her title rematch. She obviously, you know, is getting, you know, penalized for beating Ronda Rousey. I don't know how true that is. You know, I'm not in the inner circle to know how true that is. But what I do know is that when I'm looking at it from the perspective that I am, I don't think Ronda got an immediate rematch either. Now, part of that could have been Ronda's fault, granted, because she did kind of just fall off the map after she lost to Holm. But the way I look at it, I mean, if anybody deserves a rematch at this point, it's got to be Ronda, because she was the first one to lose the damn belt, right? So I don't think that it's like a favoritism kind of thing. I think that the UFC wants a Holly Holm Ronda Rousey rematch first, and then a title fight. Because I think at this point, a title fight with Miesha Tate, no disrespect to Miesha Tate, she's awesome, but at this point, a title fight with Miesha Tate and one of those two is not what the UFC wants to see. They want to see Ronda Rousey, or what the fan base wants to see. The fan base wants to see Ronda Rousey back in action again. And Dana White is known for a bevy of things, and one of them being giving the people what they want. So, I think that we're going to see a Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm rematch before we see another Holly Holm title rematch or another Ronda Rousey title rematch. And I think that should be great because I want to see another Rousey Holm fight. I don't want to see my Miesha Tate fight against who's that woman? I don't even Amanda Nunes. Yeah. She's 5-1, relatively unknown. I mean, Miesha Tate pretty much has us in the bag, right? So I want to see something else. You know, honestly, as somebody who watches a little bit of fighting from time to time, if I want to see something, I want to see something that's more explosive than Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. It just doesn't roll off the tongue quite well enough for me to enjoy that kind of thing. It just doesn't roll off the tongue for me quite well to enjoy that kind of thing. So, you know, I want to see something like that. I don't really want to see you know, Miesha Tate at this point, unless she's fighting one of the two, Ronda or Holly. Preferably Ronda. But, you know, either one. I don't know how they're going to figure out who gets their title shot first, because they both were champions that lost. So, you know, they're both entitled to a rematch to get the belt back. So, you know, Dana White will figure that part out. But big things coming there. Now, guys, the NFL draft is almost upon us, for those of you who don't know quite yet. And when we talk about quarterbacks, we have a lot of quarterback drama going on. So first, let's begin with the Eagles. Sam Bradford wants out. And I guess this is part of just him thinking that, you know, he deserves a franchise tag with the Eagles. And the Eagles did do something quite controversial. They traded up for the second pick. So we know they either want Carson Wentz or Jared Goff. And they're either sold on one or the other or both. This gets kind of interesting because to think about this, you know, Sam Bradford hasn't been necessarily all that great as a franchise quarterback if you want to talk about being consistent and being a winner. That's not really Sam Bradford. So I don't think he's in much of a position to argue about them bringing in an insurance policy or a quarterback they can groom for the next 2 to 3 years, because I don't see Sam Bradford there in the next 2 to 3 years. Remember, Bradford was mainly there because Chip Kelly wanted him there. Chip Kelly was like the ultimate dictator in Philadelphia, okay? He had power over everything. He literally overhauled the whole entire roster to his absolute preference. And Sam Bradford was one of those guys. Now, they still want to keep him. The Eagles still want Sam Bradford. That's not the problem. But the problem is, Sam Bradford doesn't want this, you know, rookie future franchise quarterback breathing over his shoulder, because I'm pretty sure he has more talent than Sam Bradford has. Whichever one, you know, Goff or Wentz, you know, whichever one you want to say. I think they have a little more talent than Sam Bradford has, and I think they could be a little better than Sam Bradford is. If you look at, you know, how they play, and if you look at their combine results and, you know, their accuracy, it's just hands down better. And even more if they get hands on Jared Goff, which is highly unlikely because he's probably going first. But I'm kind of interested to see what happens with Sam Bradford here. Does he stay? Does he go? Does he ask to get away? I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen here. You know, there's a long off season still ahead of us. We don't quite know what's going to happen yet, but it looks like Sam Bradford's out of town. If you want to safely assume something, it looks like Sam Bradford's out of town. And, I don't want to say good riddance because I don't really think that he's that bad of a quarterback. I just don't think that he's to the point where he's above competing for a starting job. He hasn't proven that he's that set in stone yet. If he would have had a record-breaking season last season, I'd be like, hey, keep the guy around. He doesn't need anybody breathing over his shoulder. You might as well get somebody else with that pick. But, he was so-so last year. They didn't even really win the division, so he's expendable at this point. All right. Colin Kaepernick is out. Where is he going to go? Where does it seem like he's going to go? I mean, in my opinion, I have like this big, huge red arrow that has like flashing lights and the word "it's obvious" in the middle of it, pointing towards Denver. Just like pointing at Denver. Because they're not that far off. They weren't that far off before. I mean, they were only like, what, $3 million apart on a deal with Colin Kaepernick before, right? When they talked about trades to begin with. So, I think they're going to find a way to make up that difference. I mean, let's face it. Denver does not have a decent quarterback coming into this season because Brock Osweiler pretty much bolted out the door. So, that's kind of a problem. If they want to make it back to where they got to, at least repeating the Super Bowl, which teams rarely do, by the way, because it's very hard to repeat in the NFL. It's like a pond of fish, and they're all the same size. So, it's hard to get back to that point, obviously. But with the quarterback they have right now, leading the offense, or that would be leading the offense coming to the next season, it'd be even more of a long shot, no matter how good that defense is. And I mean, I love me some Von Miller, and I love me some Akeem Talib, and all those guys are great, but come on. That quarterback, come on, son. It ain't happening like that. So, they definitely need a quarterback. And I think Kaepernick is good enough to get them. He could do what Peyton did, maybe even a little bit better because he's younger. He's not as banged up, as far as injuries go. So he could probably do it a little bit better. And he helped the rushing attack, too, because he is very good on the wheels. He has some very nice wheels on him. So, I would definitely like to see Colin Kaepernick somewhere in the vicinity of Denver, especially over Sam Bradford. So, there's that. Now, let's talk about this guy, Brian Hoyer. Interesting dude, right? So, when we talk about the NFL draft, the only two names I hear the most are Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. And then you have some of these people talking about Connor Cook, which is really not all that great for him anyways. A lot of people don't like, a lot of scouts don't like Connor Cook. So, he definitely wouldn't be a threat. But there's one guy, Paxton Lynch from Memphis. Yeah, he's about 6'8", yay high, way high, and has a cannon for an arm. Paxton Lynch is going to be a pretty good quarterback. The only thing is, he played for Memphis. That's the only reason people aren't all over him. If he played for any other school like Alabama or somebody like that, he would be a pretty hot commodity in the draft. But word is that this guy is going to be going almost, pretty much first round at this point. How does that bode for quarterbacks like Brian Hoyer? Well, he's kind of in the same predicament Sam Bradford's in. If you could put it in that kind of perspective, if he goes anywhere where one of those three names, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, or Paxton Lynch would go, you could see him being pushed out the door in a couple of years, and I don't think anybody wants that for their career. So it's kind of scary. I get it. And I don't know if you guys have seen the big board so far, but a lot of quarterbacks are going. So there's a very big chance that a lot of these quarterbacks are going to be phased out. Not phased out, but they're going to be reduced in roles. They're not going to be, what they were before as far as roles on a team go, especially with some of these younger quarterbacks coming out. They're nothing to shake a stick at. I'm not saying it should happen, but it probably will for some teams because now more than ever, and I say this a lot, the quarterback is just ever so important. Because if your quarterback sucks, your team sucks as far as getting to where you need to get. Even the Denver Broncos, for their shortcomings at quarterback, they had two quarterbacks that could produce for periods of time. So they got a chance to rotate in and out, and it actually helped the Broncos kind of stay afloat to get into the playoffs and, win a Super Bowl, obviously. Congrats to Peyton for riding off in the sunset. But that's besides the point. Brian Hoyer will obviously wait before signing with the team. He wants to see what the draft is going to look like, and he doesn't have to wait very long because whoop-de-doo, it's Thursday, which means it's draft day. 8 o'clock p.m., guys. Be there. Chicago, Illinois, Chirac, right? So, we will see what happens with Brian Hoyer. I think he's a decent quarterback. He's better than Sam Bradford, to be honest. If I had to choose between him and Sam Bradford, I'd choose Brian Hoyer. I don't know where he would go at this point. The Broncos does sound nice, and I think he could definitely compete with Colin Kaepernick for a starting job just because of his experience over Colin Kaepernick's youth. So it might actually help the Broncos a little bit more. The Jets, the Browns, I don't think so. They seem pretty sold on RG3 at this point. So much so to the point where they're making more deals. They traded down a couple of draft picks and they did this and that. I'm thinking they really believe in RG3. Not a bad thing at all, by the way, because I think RG3 does need a fair shot in this league. He didn't deserve to have Kirk Cousins breathing down his back and then a coach, completely sabotaging what made him great. So I think he does deserve a fair shot. So I don't think that the Browns is going to be where he would compete for a starting job at. And although there are some concerns about RG3, I don't think that they would bring in Brian Hoyer to help with those concerns at all. And the last thing I wanna kind of bring to the table is this: how does everybody feel about Josh Norman in Washington? And how much of a mistake did the Panthers make? How much of a mistake did the Panthers make by not re-signing this man, even after all the drama behind everything? The fact that, his agent pretty much didn't let him know anything that was going on and pretty much, talked Carolina out of a deal outside of Josh Norman's knowledge. And, Josh goes back and tries to tell them, I did not know what was going on with the negotiation of my contract, and they just threw it off the table. Kind of bad, right? Doesn't it seem like a little bit stained? Doesn't it seem like a little bad? And it's uncharacteristic of the Panthers, too, because on their end, it's one thing if Josh Norman knew what they were offering and he said, I don't want it. But he didn't say that. He didn't say anything. He didn't get a chance to say nothing. His agent did all the talking and pretty much talked him out of a deal. It made the Panthers pretty much rescind the franchise tag off of him. Like they probably would have done anyways because they were $5 million apart on a deal, on a long-term deal. So when you talk about $5 million apart on a long-term deal, it's one thing if it's a short-term deal. You have to deal with that person for 1 year. That's not too big of a financial constraint because, you can make that up in salary cap for the years to come. But when you talk about long-term and you guys can't get within $5 million of each other, I think that that's a really big problem. And I don't like Josh Norman going to the Redskins because the Redskins are garbage to me, to be quite honest. Everything about that organization to me is pretty much garbage. And I understand they're salivating over having another secondary. I mean, you know, Josh Norman's the best corner in the league to me at this point, outside of maybe Richard Sherman. So it's not bad for Josh Norman, but he's one guy. You know, he's one player, and you still have to find a way to improve 10 other players on that terrible defense that is the Redskins. So I don't know, man. It just doesn't look too great. Their defense is gonna get better than it was last year, but they're gonna have to do some more building outside of, you know, acquiring Josh Norman. So hopefully they do well in the draft, and maybe that'll you know, back up some of the decision to sign Josh Norman at such a huge rate. And I really thought that Norman would land to the Cowboys, because they were looking for a secondary to begin with anyway. You know, they were already flirting with the prospect of a Jalen Ramsey joining their team because they needed more help there. But at this point, it looks like the Cowboys are probably going to go Joey Bosa. So I thought they would probably pick up maybe like a Josh Norman or someone like that. But they didn't, obviously, so that's that. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. There will probably be another one up about other subject matter later on. I just wanted to take a second to just, you know, cover, you know, what's going on with the NFL draft and the UFC and MMA as it stands, because I am very excited for UFC 200 as everyone else is probably rightfully so. And I'm very excited for the NFL draft as well, because there's a lot of talent this year. There's not a lot of like surefire talent that you could pick out and be like, hey, that's a franchise player. But there's a lot of players that just have potential and definitely have the physical tools. After, you know, I watched the combine from the beginning. You know, I watched it from, you know, the first day of, the NFL combine. You know, when they had them, you know, testing them on the 40-yard dash and all this other stuff like that. And some of these guys are freaks, man. Some of these guys are really freakishly athletic coming out of this NFL draft class, which is actually crazy because the athleticism at the quarterback spot as well is not bad. You know, Cardell Jones, Paxton Lynch, Carson Wentz, obviously, the main one, you know, 6'4", about 215, 220. Pretty big guy, and can move, has some wheels on him. So I'm very excited to see what happens with this upcoming NFL draft. As I'm excited to see what happens with UFC, because I haven't seen a Jon Jones fight in a while, so I might be buying this on pay-per-view. I might have something to say about this one. With that being said, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Keep an eye out for more uploads. And by the way, if you have not already, subscribe, maybe leave a comment, leave a like. I definitely want to hear what you have to say about these things. Thank you guys, and have a great day.